What's going on, FA Nation? Welcome back. This is the NASCAR Fantasy One NASCAR DFS podcast. I'm Dan Malin, and I'm joined, as always, by our three-time FSWA NASCAR Writer of the Year, Matt Selz. Matt, we are coming off another short flat track race, this time in New England. Christopher Bell, I guess we can't be too surprised. Spoiling Joe Gibbs Racing secrets, but winning them back over by going to victory lane. I guess we can't be too surprised because we've seen the dominance from him in the Xfinity Series. He won at New Hampshire a couple of years ago, and then he just goes right back to victory lane for what I think is the third time this year.
I believe so. I know it was a weekend sweep for him. He'd won 4 straight in the Xfinity Series and then goes and wins his, second in 3 years in the Cup Series, if memory serves. Yeah, pretty impressive. I know that people are going to hammer NASCAR for the rain tire. Will they, won't they change them? Will they, won't they let them change to a different rain tire situation? But look, it's literally the first time they've ever done that. Okay. Yeah. There's no real way to simulate every possible scenario of, oh God, we're putting them on late in a race. What happens if there's a caution and we burn through all the tires and then we have to put them out on slicks on a wet track and then people crash? And then we get the problem we had in, Atlanta a couple of years ago where it rained in turn 1. They didn't notice. They sent everybody out and they wrecked. In Daytona? It might have been Daytona.
So I thought it was New Hampshire.
Well, it did that too. There was 2 of them where they had problems with wet restarts that led to the rain tires and whatnot. I see both sides. You're a premier motorsport. You can let teams decide when to switch and when not to switch. I will say F1 has some regulations about this where if they deem it as a wet track, you can't switch until they change the track status.
I will say this. The racing wasn't great, but it was actually kind of fun seeing them go 4 or 5 wide at a track like New Hampshire. I thought that was
it looked like Phoenix on the restarts. It was nuts.
Yeah.
I know some drivers did not like being that wide. Obviously, they wrecked out. I know Haley Deegan in the Xfinity Series had some serious problems just driving next to another person. But that was fun. I will say the racing was okay. I thought there was good battles throughout the pack.
It just once again just seems like the short flat track package, the Aero, it struggles with passing.
Yes. Yeah, we saw that in Iowa where Blaney was, as long as you could get clean air, you weren't going to pass Blaney. The 6 lead changes, I think, who tweeted it out? Jeff Gluck, Pockris. One of them tweeted out the 6 lead changes at New Hampshire last weekend were the least since, I think, Martinsville in 2022.
That's awful.
I think, something like that. I mean, some weeks it happens. We're not going to get bangers of races every single week. I thought the fact that they could finish that race thanks to the rain tires was fantastic because I didn't think they were going to get it finished at all. So, that was spectacular. We'll see if they get better with the implementation of the rain tires and, letting drivers decide if they want to go to slicks or not. I do get the safety issue where you can't really have half the field on slicks and half the field on wets, and then somebody wrecks out somebody else who had better grip. Like, I get it. We'll see. But now we're on to Nashville. Hot chicken capital of the world, right? Home of Tootsie. Daniel Swear is the sponsor.
Yeah, it's not a bad track, and it's kind of unique to New Hampshire in that they give away their own unique trophy. If you win a race at Nashville, you get a guitar. It's a gift.
Yeah, you get a Fender guitar. That's a sweet trophy.
And then, but it bothers me that this track is Nashville Superspeedway, and it's not a superspeedway. It's not even like a mile and a half. It's like a mile and a third. But either way, I'm excited because we should be of the mindset that the racing is going to be better this weekend than it was the last 2 weekends because It's an intermediate track. It's concrete.
And it's going to be hot.
Yeah.
Like really hot. Like if you are going to the race, first of all, have a good time. Second of all, stay hydrated. And I know it's tough because they have a bad cooler policy there, but it's going to be like 100 degrees there.
It was 97 today in Atlanta, and like I was walking by some of the Teamsters on the lot, and they had like one of those things where you can just kind of like point a laser at the ground and get the temperature.
Yeah, the infrared temp sensors. Yeah,
and it was 142 degrees on the lot. Like it's just been so insanely hot in the South. So yeah,
it was hot here 2 days ago. It was feels like of 115.
Yeah, that's
just in the air, not even touching like surfaces.
Disgusting.
So that's now sitting in Nashville this weekend. So hopefully it cools off. Otherwise, it's going to be taxing on the drivers. It's going to be taxing on the cars. There's going to be zero grip to be found because concrete is one of the more temperature sensitive surfaces to race on. So it could be fun. We could see a lot of slipping and sliding going around.
Overall, what are you expecting for the racing, even if it's just how you project it to go? Because we were talking briefly about this track before the podcast. We were trying to find the comparable tracks, and it's easy to pull out Dover and Bristol because those are also concrete tracks. But you made the comment that it's like its own weird little track because it is a tri-oval, but it's not like it's not going to be like Vegas. You did make the comparison to Kansas, but what are you expecting? Because I'm just expecting this to kind of be what we've seen from the intermediate package, which has been good racing. Hopefully we see some passing. I know that has been the case in the truck series because I have that playbook dropping Thursday morning, probably before this podcast is published. But it's like, I've seen in the truck and the Xfinity series, we do get multiple dominators. And I think that's also sort of been the case with the Cup series since the evolution of the next gen car. But I'm just kind of curious and to pick your brain as to what you're expecting this weekend.
Yeah, so it is a funny track, right? We've talked about it's a mile and a third, so that's similar in distance to Darlington, but it's not nearly as steep as Darlington, right? Nashville is banked at 14 degrees in the turn. Darlington is almost 30 in the turns. Like it's not even close, even though the distance. And then there's the fact that Nashville is a tri-oval, much like basically all of the intermediates except for like Texas and Charlotte, right? We're not comparing it to Texas or Charlotte. The banking in those is way higher. Kansas comes to mind because Kansas is one of the shallower mile and a half. Now, the banking in Kansas is still steeper than Nashville, but it is progressive. So when you're lower, when you're closer to the apron in the corner in Kansas, you're dealing with about 14 or 15 degrees of banking. Out by the walls, it gets up closer to 20. I'm hoping we get multiple lines at Nashville like we've gotten at Kansas. That would be spectacular. Previously, the restarts at Nashville have been nuts, but then once the racing starts, it kind of settles into a single file line where passing can be tough at times. We've seen some crazy restarts here. We've seen some crazy pit strategy, right? JGR pitted 2 cars from the lead 2 years ago and wound up finishing in the 20s, right? Kyle Busch and Truex pitted.
I do remember Kyle was not thrilled about that at the time.
No, I think it led to him leaving. I think it led to him leaving JGR, to be honest. But yeah, they pitted from like first and second, if I remember correctly, and never sniffed the front of the field again. So we'll see. This is a track where pit strategy can come in. I'm not sure tires are really going to matter that much because concrete doesn't tend to wear the tires all that much unless it's really hot and then they're slipping and sliding everywhere. We may see some more tire wear, but in terms of dominators, I think we probably see 2 guys lead a chunk of the laps. Because the other way that this is different is that there's 300 laps in this race. So it's like a little longer than a normal intermediate, but it's not quite as long as a short, right? It's the same number of laps, technically one less lap than we had this weekend at New Hampshire. But it's actually more mileage because this track's a little longer than New Hampshire is.
Yeah,
So,
I'm actually looking. I have the racing reference pages pulled up for the 3 races at Nashville. 2021, when they were not in the next gen car, Kyle Larson led 264 laps with 133 fastest
yeah,
laps.
he straight up dominated that race. It was an
That's
absolute clinic.
a monstrous DraftKings score. But in the next gen car, in 2022, Chase Elliott won. He led 42 laps. Denny Hamlin led 114. Kyle Busch led 54. MTJ led 82. And as you mentioned, they did have the disappointing pitting strategy. Last year, Chastain went, he didn't go wire to wire, but he started on the pole, finished first, led 99 laps. Truex finished second with 50 laps led, and Hamlin led 81, and then Tyler Reddick finished 30th, and he also led 33. So in the 2 races we've seen in the next gen car, we are seeing a primary, a secondary, a tertiary, and kind of, I don't know what the term for the 4th one would be, but we're seeing potentially 3 or 4 guys at least go out there and lead 40 laps.
Yeah, I think we're going to see more of that this year, especially since the intermediate package has produced that. If we go back to other intermediate races this year, it's been very hard to find one guy who just straight up runs away from the pack at an intermediate track so far. Even at Bristol, a short track produced multiple laps dominators. Obviously 500 laps in that race, but so that's kind of what I'm expecting in terms of tracks that we can compare this to. We want to go with, we talked about a few. Obviously Kansas is in there. Looking back at this track for the last 2 years, because the first year was not with the next gen car, so we want to look at the last 2, not to exclude Kyle Larson's dominance, but different car, different setup, clearly different results have happened. We can toss in Bristol this year, specifically this year, because they ran the intermediate package at Bristol this year, as compared to the playoff races last year. Since previously it had been Bristol Dirt in the spring.
Yeah,
didn't happen this year, but they ran the short track package at Bristol prior to this year. So, and then we can look at Dover. They ran the intermediate package at Dover. Again, not a 1-for-1 comparison. Those are obviously short tracks. Dover's a mile, way more steeply banked, but the concrete is similar. So if we want to do that, we can kind of cobble together some races there for those. I'm just trying to see if there's any others that I tossed in the lot, but no, not particularly. I don't really like the comp to Charlotte or Texas because the banking is too steep. And quad ovals don't really comp. So
yeah, that's fair. Plus it's asphalt.
yeah. Also, Homestead and Darlington have they're steeper and they have way too much tire wear.
Yeah, way too much.
Yes.
You just want to dig into the driver pool?
Yeah, let's go ahead
Do
and go for
your little magical thing.
the little handy dandy thing. We're gonna share the driver pool. Hopefully this works. Oh, look at me go!
Anybody listening on iTunes is just confused.
Yes.
All right, Kyle Larson. Only 3 drivers this week priced above 10K, and it's Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Christopher Bell. I guess it's kind of easy to see why Kyle Larson is just universally the most expensive driver any given week. But yeah,
also he's done pretty well here. I mean, same with Denny. C. Bell's probably the one that hasn't run very well here that's in this group. But he's kind of a guy who can be fast anywhere at this point. And Toyotas are very good in this package. So
yeah, and I think he mostly just has to be very encouraged. I mean, Hamlin is kind of on a skid. 3 straight finishes outside the top 20. But at the same time, in the 2 next-gen races that we've seen here, he led 114 laps 2 years ago, 81 last year, and finished 3rd and 6th in those races, respectively.
I just don't think Denny's car liked the wet tires last week.
Yeah, I didn't like it either because he
He was up near the front challenging for the lead, and then they came back with wet tires, and he dropped like a flipping rock.
Yeah, and that was frustrating because DraftKings introduced Pick 6 for NASCAR last week, and their lines were unbelievable.
Well, we
I
thought
did.
they were unbelievable, and then
I jumped on, Kyle Busch under, it was like 19.5 fastest laps. I also had Ross Chastain under like 22 laps led. Those were easy. And then I had Denny Hamlin finishing 11 better than 11 and a half. So a top 10, and he was the three leg parlay or whatever was good to hit. He hated the rain tires. He did nothing but go backwards in the rain tires, and I'm like, all right, I guess I need a caution or some chaos. But like even then, like nothing was helping him. He just kept going backwards and was just awful on the wet tires, and so that cost me a good amount of money. I'm not bitter, but I'm hoping like if I dive back into the pick six this week, I'm hoping like they still have some very tempting and just very friendly driver props, because last week like it was basically free money until they went to the rain tires.
yeah, had they just called it, you would have been
It
dandy.
would have been great, and I would
Pretty
have.
sure he was like fourth when they went to the rain tires, and
I think he was like fourth or sixth, and then even then, like when they had the lengthy delay, I was up in DFS, and sure enough, they came back with the rain tires, and I ended up losing money in DFS, and I lost my 3-legger for the pick six. But dive back into it this week. Not going to quit. I'm just bitter.
I am a little surprised to see Truex under 10,000. Just given he's led a bunch of laps in the next gen car. We just went over it. He's top 50 laps led in each of the last 2 races here. He arguably should have finished second in both of the races had they not pitted for an asinine tire strategy. And he was really quite pacey there at New Hampshire for a while.
33 fastest laps and not a single lap led.
Nope. That's quite an accomplishment, to be honest.
Yeah, that's impressive.
So, I'm a little surprised that we're getting a slight discount there. I mean, he's $700 cheaper than he was at New Hampshire, and this is a track where he's led a bunch of laps and been a threat each of the last 2 years. So, yeah, I mean, we could play anybody between Reddick and Chase Elliott too, to be honest. Like,
oh crap! I just closed DraftKings.
we got Chase Elliott at 9,700, Byron at 9,500, Blaney at 93, Chastain at 9,000, and Reddick at 8,800. I see very little downside to any of those guys at those prices.
Yeah, I think I can probably get on Chase Elliott. I know he won at Texas, and he didn't have the best car, but at the same time, I feel like an idiot because we said this last week. How his worst finish all year has been 19th, and even last week he finished 18th, which wasn't great because he was on the pole, but still had some dominator points that it helps when you're on the pole at a track like New Hampshire. But overall, it just does seem like he's more of a top 5 driver this year, even if his lone win is at Texas.
Yeah, I mean, we referenced it a little bit last week that through the first 16 races, he's had a career best average finish through 16 races so far this year, which is certainly not something we said last year. Obviously, he missed several races with a broken leg and then suspended when he decided to use his car as a weapon. So Byron's a little weird for me, to be honest. We're getting into this territory where there's always one Hendrick guy that's tough for me to read, and right now it's William Byron. He should be getting a lot better finishes and runs than he's seeming to get so far. I mean, if we just look at this in the last 5 races, he's finished 3rd, 15th, 30th, 2nd, and 26th.
Yeah, that's a little all over the place.
And he's started P6 or better in 4 of them.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, New Hampshire, he started third because the metric, but still, the other ones he's had the speed to start well. I just can't tell when he's actually going to use that speed to run well. So he's kind of the wild card of this group. Looking at it currently, I'm a little weary of the Fords again. I know Blaney's been on a roll here the last few weeks, but again, they're not aero dependent tracks. This is likely to be an aero dependent track.
Yeah, and I know that they made some slight alterations to the body in the off season. I'm slightly intrigued with Keselowski, but he looked terrible
He looked like they
last.
totally missed the setup last week.
Yeah, they qualified inside the top 10, and it just seemed like from the get-go, that car was just destined to go backwards, and it did. I mean, they finished 20th, somehow had 7 fastest laps. But it's just bizarre because it's like that team either nails it or they completely whiff, and I can't tell if they're just getting too experimental with their setups or if they're just, if they're in one of those, modes where it's like they're just trying new things ahead of the playoffs. I don't get it. You'd think for a driver that has just one win in like the last 3 or 4 years, you would want to get your driver / car owner better setups, and you wouldn't be doing this. But man, they looked terrible last week.
Maybe, but the counter argument to that is that they had so many consecutive top 10s and always threatened for top 5 that you kind of got to try something to see if it's the little bit you're missing to get you to the wins consistently.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because if you keep doing the same thing and you're getting top 5s and 10s, then all you're rooting for is a break to go your way and a late race restart where you're on the front row and you can hold it.
Yeah.
So I kind of give them props to say, hey, we got to win. We're almost assured into the playoffs, although if a different driver who's not in the playoffs yet wins every one of the last races, maybe not. But I give them props for trying stuff. It does make them a little bit of a wild card for DFS, much like William Byron, who, again, they may be trying stuff on William Byron's car. They did that. They did that previously, right? He had that run last year where he won like 3 or 4 races.
Yeah.
And then he just absolutely sucked for the rest of the year and nobody could figure it out. And in the playoffs, he was fast again.
Are
Turns
they
out
doing
they
that
were
this
trying
year?
stuff. But I don't know. I'm a little concerned where Arrow's required that now Logano and Cindric and Blaney kind of go back into a hidey hut of sorts. Because the Fords have not been great in intermediate tracks this year.
Right.
Hopefully last year either. Even on tracks where we expect them to do well based on previous track history, they haven't done particularly well. I mean, Blaney had a solid run at Kansas, moving up 14 spots, but do we really want to bank on him qualifying 26th and giving us PD to find the value for Blaney? Not particularly.
Are you interested in Ty Gibbs? Did you mention him already?
Generally, yes.
The price is dropping.
Well, so is his finishes. So
Shut up.
they're correlated.
But I mean, at Bristol,
He did look really good at Bristol.
he led 137 laps. Now, granted, there's 500 laps in that race, so it's like if you can get a long green flag run, you're bleeding about 2 to 3 laps a minute.
Yeah,
maybe even like it's So
they're running about 22 second lap times at Bristol.
Yeah, but in general, I'm looking at Ryan Stevens, who runs Win the Race, and I like his true performance rating that he offers up. And Ty Gibbs on comparable tracks, Ty Gibbs has like the 3rd best true performance average, just behind Denny Hamlin and Kyle Larson. And like at 8,400, that really sticks out to me.
Yeah, he also ran pretty well at Vegas, which I know we didn't mention as a comparable track, but it
Yeah.
is a high-speed intermediate. He ran well there. You said he led, 137 laps at Bristol. Again, 500 laps in the race, but you're still leading, more than a quarter of the race? That's
Yeah.
impressive.
And I know we said we weren't going to compare Charlotte, but I mean, he did lead 74 laps from the pole in the Coca-Cola 600. And I know that's not a quarter; it's not even 20%. But
And Kansas was just, he wrecked out of that, but he showed up with speed and qualified P6. So,
and at Dover, another concrete track, he started P19 and finished 10th.
yeah, I think there's value here. I think some recency bias is going to keep some folks off of him.
Yeah. Now the finishes have not been good, but if we're going back to, I mean, if we're just looking at, Gateway it's a mile and a quarter, but it's mostly flat. And then they went to Sonoma for road course. And then the last two tracks have been short flats. And yes, we do rely on Joe Gibbs Racing to be good on the short flats, but Gibbs has thrived mostly on the higher banked. I can't say Nashville's higher banked, but like on these intermediates and in this package. And I think it's where he's probably better suited for the time being. So I do like him for this week.
Yeah, and if you're investing in JGRs and Toyotas, he is $1,400 cheaper than the rest of his teammates.
Yeah.
So, there's value A in the price and what we expect he can do, and B just compared to similar equipment. And by the way, last year, at Nashville, Ty Gibbs started 16th and finished 14th. So,
Not bad for his rookie season.
not terrible.
Yeah.
Not terrible for a track he hadn't run at previously.
Any interest in Kyle Busch?
No. Last week was a Hail Mary, and that wound up like 99% of Hail Marys.
Man, so bad.
I
He's
mean,
finished
I do kind of feel
35th
bad
in
for
three
him,
of the
but
last four races.
I do kind of feel bad for him, but he made his bed.
Yeah.
So, it's just, I don't understand how he's this close to the playoffs, to be perfectly honest. I'm reasonably impressed that he's within sniffing distance of the playoffs right now.
Do you think that RCR recently made a change in personnel? Not to like crew chiefs or car chiefs or anything, but they did announce that I think let me try to find this.
I think some picker members swapped.
No, I thought it was bigger than that. Richard Childress Racer. Give me the news.
Was Andy P.
Okay. He retired from overseeing competition at RCR. Yeah, and Keith Rodden was named his interim replacement. Does that have anything to do? Like, could that maybe signal a change?
I have hope that would be a change, but I don't know if it kicks in week one. Now, that being said, I do have interest in his teammate. We have a we have a rare Austin Dillon sighting on this pod.
Is this more of like a track history thing?
Yeah, I mean, if we're just going off of, we need something to sink teeth into. He started 26th last year, and he finished 13th.
Yeah. Actually, no, the track history is very good, especially for DFS, where he's gained at least 13 spots of PD in each race.
Yeah, he moved up.
Yeah, that's solid.
He went. He nailed the top. He's gotten 2 top 15s here in the next gen car.
Yeah, my bad. He moved up only 6 spots in 2022, but still, 3 finishes in the top 15 is very good.
Yeah. By the way, for whatever it's worth, Austin Cindric has also pulled off 2 pretty good finishes here. As we write off Penske earlier in the pod, Austin Cindric had a pretty good run here previously. And if we're talking the Austin contingent.
Yeah.
But anyway, now we skipped over some other guys here, but look, I have hope going forward that helps. But again, I don't know that it's a week one immediate change thing unless they've been planning this and he's been working behind the scenes to change some stuff about the intermediate package, knowing that this is kind of where the break happened between the short track package and the intermediates. Maybe, but I think we got to let it cook for a couple of weeks here. I certainly don't know if I want to bank on Kyle Busch at $8,200.
Yeah, and you know what the thing is like a lot of these guys in like the low 8Ks and probably the 7K range, with the exception of Chase Briscoe and Noah Gragson, and but with the exception of those two, in this tier, it really just depends, like, where they start.
Right.
But I could probably play Briscoe and Gragson comfortably if they're just, even if they're in the top 20.
Probably Suarez.
Like Chase Briscoe finished second last week in New Hampshire.
Yes.
So, very good time to introduce him for the 19 car next year.
Yeah,
Gragson was competitive as well, but like
also
just had
Josh Berry finished third. So in my betting piece, I had Berry at 35-1 and Briscoe at 100-1. They finished second and third.
Nice done.
Yeah, the favorite won, and then my two long shots finished second and third. How about that? Yeah, this group, we kind of got to see how they're running in practice and where they're starting. I don't know, man. You can say, oh, well, what if Kyle Busch starts last? Okay, well, he started 30th last week.
Yeah, we fell for this trap last week.
He managed to go backwards. Even before, I mean, hell, he spun himself out on a flipping warm-up lap. Like, it was
just an abomination with that team this year. It's such a shame because he won 3 races last year, and then the season went to crap.
Yeah, it's not been. I think he's left the infield without taking questions more times than he's won the last 2 years.
Yeah. An interesting Corey Heim. He's not making his Cup Series debut, but he is making his Cup Series debut with a good team.
Maybe I think that's why he's at $7,200 is
because in his previous 2 races with Legacy, like it's the equipment that is pricing him up, and kudos to DraftKings for actually catching that because sometimes they miss crap like that.
Because at Dover, which is a comparable track, he put up 28 points at $5,800, and then at Kansas the following week he put up 18 points at $5,900. So they have figured this out. Unfortunately, I think he's priced a little too high for my liking.
You know who they haven't figured out, Matt?
Who's that?
Todd Gilliland, who is once again just 6,700.
They did raise his price.
So 2 weeks ago for Iowa, he was 6,700, and then for New Hampshire, he was 64. He's back up to 67. I don't get it.
64 for Gateway, 67 for Sonoma, 67 for Iowa, 64 for New Hampshire, and 67 this week.
Like,
it's
a great run he's on.
Nabbed 3 top 12 finishes.
Yeah. And like the thing is that I was heavy on him last week.
Yes.
And he was still only like 13 to 14% owned in a lot of the contests that I was playing. It's just like people are too afraid to play him when he's starting in the mid-teens, and it's just like he's proven that he can get this to a top 12 finish, and like he just keeps doing it. DraftKings isn't adjusting the price at all.
Yeah. Also, we got a freebie 19 laps let out of him too, which awesome. Didn't hurt. I'm fine with Todd Father. He is basically the playable budget guy every single week. I know you're probably tired of reading about it in the playbook, but whatever. I got to give you the best plays, and that guy is, generally speaking, one of the best plays.
I put Timmy Hill and Brett Holmes in the truck playbook every week because typically one of them is always hitting. Most of the time, both of them are hitting. I have no problem putting the same value plays in the playbook if I know that they're the safest and best options.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, we got to save money somewhere, and with the mid-tier being so wonky this week, I'm going back to tried and true things in the budget tier, and then we'll just experiment from there.
I guess for the rest of the season, do you just kind of throw out track history for anything that Gilliland has done prior to the season?
Probably.
Yeah, because even at Nashville, like
I mean, if he's good, then it's an extra bonus. I mean, I don't want to sound biased where I'm just going to toss out the crap and count the good stuff, but like if it's good and he's on a run, that's when you really benefit from a guy.
He's been so good this year.
Yeah, he's been. There's a reason why he got the extension.
Eric Jones is always a good play. Like the car is always going to suck, but
yeah, but it tracks where he's run well. Speaking of counting track history for something,
yeah.
But
you can always count on him to pretty much qualify outside the top 30, and he's good enough to get that car into the top 20.
Yep, I would agree. In 2023, he qualified at 23rd and finished 8th.
Yeah.
In 2022, he qualified at 23rd and finished 11th. So, is he going to qualify at 23rd for a third straight time? I don't know. We'll see. But the car has generally been terrible this year. But yet, man, of course.
He and Nemechek finished 8th and 13th last week.
Yeah, I didn't pay attention to him. He pulls off 19 spots of PD. Congrats there, man. I guess when I don't pay attention to you, you start showing up. Yeah, I mean he's in play.
Yeah.
You know.
I kind of like Stenhouse. I'll say it.
The problem with Stenhouse is you can't mention his name too much because then it's expected and then he sucks.
That's why I'm kind of mumbling.
There you go.
Like, I don't want to say it too loud because then...
We can't say it 3 times because then it's like...
If you say it too loud, you're speaking it into existence too much. But granted, the last 2 tracks do not have any comparison to Nashville. But he was 5th at Iowa, 7th at New Hampshire. Bizarre. But at Dover this year, he had an average running position of 15th, but he finished 35th.
So
gives me
when we look over 11 comparable tracks, which is the next gen era for the ones that we've talked about earlier on the podcast, that's 11 races.
Yeah.
He has a top 5, which is the same as Eric Jones. He has 2 top 10s. Eric Jones has 3. Stenhouse has 4 top 15s. Jones has 4 top 15s. And Stenhouse has 6 top 20s. Eric Jones has 6 top 20s. So they're very similar. Yeah. I will say Eric Jones's average finish in 9 races compared to 11 is 2.5 spots higher per race. But he also starts 2.5 spots closer to the front. So,
yeah. And lastly, I think we just both agree that we still like Justin Haley, even though he had a top 10 car last week.
He did, man. That car looked.
Yeah, it looked really good.
I don't know. Again, I think he got caught up by who was it, McDowell or whoever wrecked late. But man, I had him as a top 10.
Yeah, on the final restart, he just
for sure I had it, and then nope, finished 19th.
And it's kind of wild because he started P24 last week. We've seen him with top 15, top 10 upside, and P24, and he was still sub 10% owned in a lot of the tournament contests. Truly baffling.
Yeah. Question: what about Nemechek?
Yeah, I mean, I can get behind it. Like, if I like Jones, then I have to like Nemechek as well. The problem with Nemechek is, like, there are going to be days where, you know, like Sonoma or even Gateway, where he's going to start outside the top 30, and you have to understand that you might just get 20 points from him if he finishes like 27th, 28th, something like that. Basically what happened last week was like the absolute ceiling, where he started 28th, finished 8th, but he didn't really have any like business being up there most of the race. Like, I think it was literally just something that he and Jones actually benefited from the rain tires, it seems.
Yeah. Well, you say it's the ceiling, but at Bristol in the intermediate package, he started 26th and finished 6th with 9 fastest laps.
Yeah, that's fair.
And Dover finished 20th after starting 34th, and Kansas finished 13th after starting 29th. So there's some intriguing.
And what I should be doing as a DFS player is just diversifying my exposures more among the value tier.
Yes.
Like even last week, I was irresponsibly heavy on Gilliland, Haley, even a guy like Carson Hosever who did okay. But I should be spreading my exposure out more in this tier, and I should be getting more exposures to John Hunter Nemechek. And I know like he's just going to have those weeks where he gets me maybe 20 to 25 points, and that's fine for cash games. But it's the weeks he has like at New Hampshire and Bristol where those weekends really crush it in GPPs.
Yeah, I mean if he puts up 62 like he did at Bristol.
Yeah, and we're all just learning how to be better.
Yep. So with that, schedule pretty much the same. Obviously, if you're listening to this, the pod's already out. Boy, there's a genius statement for you. Best bet piece will be out Friday. We'll have playbook out Saturday, probably late afternoon. I would imagine after practice and qualifying are done for the Cup Series, and we sort through all that, data and whatnot. And then projections will be out Sunday morning. Rostership will be out Sunday morning as well for the Cup Series. Malin already mentioned that he has the truck playbook ready to go for Thursday.
It's not published yet. It just needs to be edited by our editor editing team, and then Xfinity playbook will be up Friday morning. Both those playbooks will have updates once we know the starting order.
There you go.
Cool.
Luckily, I don't think we have the nasty 4-letter R word in the forecast this weekend.
No, I saw some mild projections. I think between like 30 and 40% Sunday morning, but I think it's going to be perfectly fine by the time they actually go racing Sunday afternoon.
Yeah. But I do think it's gonna be pretty toasty.
Oh, for sure.
There this weekend. So Sunday looks like 93 with a chance of rain. Saturday 95.
Mm-hmm.
So it's gonna be hot and slick this weekend. But hopefully we don't have to hear the nasty R word. But with that,
fingers crossed.
I think we can put a wrap on this latest episode.
Well, Matt, thank you so much for your time. Best of luck to you this weekend with Nashville, and best of luck to the FA Nation.
Best of luck, FA Nation.